think that President Obama is behind it because his people are certainly behind it. And some of the leaks possibly come from that group.
That was President Trump earlier this week accusing former President Obama of being behind leaks about his campaign's potential ties to Russia. But yesterday, the president went further, claiming without evidence that President Obama ordered wiretaps against him. And the president is now demanding that Congress investigate. We have a lot to talk about with our political panel. We have with us former Republican House Intelligence Chair Mike Rogers, former Democratic Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm, Dana Lash, the host of the Dana Lash Show, and CNN political commentator Bakari Sellers. Thanks, one and all, for being here. Let me start with you, sir, because you were chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Should President Trump be making this allegation without any evidence?
I don't understand why they did that. He just put another quarter in the conspiracy parking meter. They've extended this story for a week, 2 weeks. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Two things. One, this should have been held, if he had that belief, and if he believed that there was some inappropriate behavior on behalf of the Justice Department doing this, then there are internal investigative mechanisms he should have used and called for. Making this a big public fight like this, I just think is wrong. Matter of fact, the only winner in this whole thing has been Vladimir Putin. I mean, the Democrats are saying that he stole an election, and the President of the United States is saying, don't worry about it, he's a pretty good guy. If I were Vladimir Putin, I'd be feeling pretty good right about now.
I think two things. One is either this tweet shows that the president has become unhinged and is grossly unfamiliar with what a president's limits of powers are, because you can't have a president ordering surveillance, and which is a danger to democracy on its own, or it is true that he is being surveilled by the FBI, not by Obama. And if that is the case, then both of these are dangers to democracy, which tells you that you need to have congressional Republicans standing up and deciding whether they're going to be loyal to this president or to the nation. And wouldn't it be better for them to have an independent investigation? If I were in Congress and I had to make that choice, I'd say, take it off of my shoulders and let's have an independent congressional committee.
What's interesting, Dana, is so yesterday I was talking to people in the White House about, well, where did this come from? Because if it's true, it is huge news. But if it's not true, then it's also huge news.
Yeah.
And the White House at that point was trying to figure out where it came from. They thought it came from media reports, from Breitbart, Mark Levin, other people like that. And then ultimately today, instead of providing evidence, they just said, well, we're calling on Congress to investigate.
Well, it has been reported. This was, I think, a story that came out a few days before the election. There were a number
on Heat Street.
Well, there were a number. I think the New York Times also had something written about it. Although who they said was named in these warrants, that varied greatly.
Well, there's a big difference between saying that people around Trump are being.
Because one story was Heat Street had said that he was named specifically, and that's the only reporting there is on him being named specifically.
Right.
And
but that's the thing.
Others were saying, well, maybe it was some individuals associated with him or associated with the campaign. Regardless, it's been reported and it's been out there for a little while.
But there's a big difference between
that's why I had the question about timing.
Between Carter Page or people around President Trump being surveilled and Obama ordering wiretaps.
That's what we don't know. That's what we don't know, which I think that they should make that information public. They should make the application for the warrant public, and that's something that at least, if not to the American public, at least to members of Congress. But whether or not something is allowed, whether or not something is curtailed by limits on presidential power, I will say that's never stopped our previous president. I mean, we have seen instances where the Associated Press reporters were gone after. We saw where James Rosen was actually referred to as a criminal agent, and his parents' phone records were seized. We saw a number of agents weaponized going after True the Vote. So I will say that there is a precedence for just because there's a limit.
Not to this level. I mean,
we've seen that in the past 8 years, though.
You're comparing apples and oranges, because here we're talking about a candidate who was running for president of the United States, and the allegation that was put forth was that his predecessor was someone.
Oh, no, this is huge. Don't get me wrong. I
think it's vastly different. But this is not new for Donald Trump. I mean, put this in the basket of, 56% African-American unemployment, or there were 3 million people who voted illegally. I mean, he makes these false claims all the time. And so that's why D.C. is so desensitized to this. Because if you look around and ask people, he made a claim that the president wiretapped Trump Tower. And people say, well, that's just Donald Trump. That's who he is. And then today he comes out with a statement and says that there are reports. No, sir, Mr. President, there are not reports. You tweeted this. You said this. This is something that came out of your mouth, and you owe the American people the facts behind it. If he is, in fact, the target of a FISA warrant, if he is the subject or his campaign is the subject of this probe, then the American people deserve answers. I think libertarians understand that. Democrats, Republicans, centrists, everyone understands that. I think we need answers.
I think the question for you, sir, is it enough for the president to say there are reports out there, whether it's Breitbart or Heat Street or whatever, because this is the president. He has access to all the information in the government, presumably. He could declassify. He can bring the information forward. I mean, maybe he should take the advice of Dana just now. Make the FISA warrant applications public so we can see if it's true or not.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the president has a higher responsibility. You have to make the transition from candidate to president of the United States. He does own the information. So it could be very possible that there was somebody who was briefed, who then briefed the president, that there was, in fact, a FISA warrant. There may not be. We don't know exactly yet. The problem here is that he climbs right back down into this bucket of causing problems for every other big issue that's out there. I mean, think of what happened to him this week. He was out pitching the growth in the United States Navy. Has to happen. Great message. Promoting jobs in the domestic defense industry. Great message. Talking to his education. All of that is lost for some kind of a weak tweet. But here's the other piece of this. This should be the sign that they need to impose discipline in the White House with the new communications director and get this thing back under control. If they don't, they're going to lose huge opportunity on big issues.